Hello, welcome to Inside Music Curation. We're back. We're the team at Feed Media Group, and we gather here once a month on the first Wednesday of the month to talk about all things inside music curation. And today we want to talk about Afrobeats. Everybody's talking about Afrobeats. Let's see, Spotify put out a website earlier this year dedicated to Afrobeats, and they talked about their streaming numbers growing from 2 billion in 2017 to 13 billion in 2022. Huge skyrocket in numbers there. Report just came out yesterday that Burna Boy, released his album on the 25th of August. It broke Apple Music's record for the most first week streams globally by an African album. Topped the Apple Music charts. So it's blowing up. Everybody's talking about it. Armando here, who joins us, was talking about this 2 years ago on our end of year 2021. What was your top picks for artists that year, Armando?
Well, that year, I can remember two. Let's see. One was Nas, and there was my number one was WizKid Essence, and that was the version featuring Tim's. That came out in 2020. Then once I heard that song, I kind of gravitated to the album Made in Lagos, and that album was amazing. I was listening to it over and over again. And then later on that year, they ended up coming up with a deluxe version, which was, featured the Justin Bieber version. And when I heard that Justin Bieber version, I told myself, Afrobeats is going somewhere. You capture, a pop star with these Afrobeat stars. This genre is going places. So ever since then, I started putting my ear to ground, to Afrobeats and trying to discover new artists.
Awesome. So we heard it first from Armando. When did you guys start noticing? Danielle is joining us today for her first time on Inside Music Curation. Thank you for joining us, Danielle. When did Afrobeats start to come into your peripheral?
Yeah, well, first of all, happy to be here. And similar to Armando, Made in Lagos was the album I was sort of first introduced to Afrobeats into. I was actually on Instagram. I follow DJ Swizz Beats, and I love him. And he would go on live and have these DJ live sessions, and he played a bunch of Afrobeats. But I think it was Blessed on Made in Lagos that really caught my eye. And then after that, I found the album. I mean, I listened to that album probably like 3 times in a row when I first discovered it. Really no skips there. And from there, just my Spotify kept, in my Discover Weekly, I just kept learning about more Afrobeats artists. It started with WizKid, then Burna Boy. Yeah, that's how I got introduced to it. It's, an intoxicating rhythm for sure.
Awesome. Claire, what was your introduction to Afrobeats like, or what have you noticed, being in curation and the trends that you've seen over the last couple of years?
Yeah, there's definitely been some interesting choices from the business growth standpoint around Afrobeats that you could sort of see this coming in that sort of way. I will say personally, I did get to spend about 2.5 months in Africa in 2018 and sort of got to hear sort of the history of African drumming and how that gets incorporated across different regions of Africa. And so even at the time, I remember thinking, oh, the rhythms I'm hearing, on the streets here are very similar to what's really starting to grow with Latin music as well. So there's a really obvious auditory tie in that way. And then I'd say about 2 years ago also, there was a lot of industry news around labels establishing divisions, typically based in Nigeria and that part of Africa. And that was sort of the next sort of business-centered focus where they wanted to develop artists internationally. We've had a lot of growth with K-pop in the United States, Latin music in the United States. So this was sort of the next world area that we were going to sort of see a focus on. And lo and behold, that came true. So I think some of the even earlier watershed moments too, in addition to Essence and WizKid, as we talked about, was also some collaborations with Justin Bieber on the Essence song. And then Ed Sheeran also has worked with some Afrobeats artists. And then obviously what's making a lot of chart-breaking success at the moment is Calm Down. So Rima and Selena Gomez typically on that version. So there is sort of this strategy of moving with very popular, very big name artists in the US and using that as a gateway to sort of expose some of these newer Afrobeats artists.
Collaborations just come up time and time again in our conversations here. It's such a powerful way to watch genres move through and influence each other, and it's exciting to see these guys working together and bringing new music to different audiences.
Definitely.
What are some other like breakthrough moments, right? Like things started hitting the scene about 2 years ago. What are some other kind of memorable moments where you're like, oh, here comes the Afrobeats again, or I'm seeing it in new places?
For me, what I started to notice was there was the FIFA, I believe it was the FIFA World Cup 2002, and they started to feature in their intro song. There was Davido was featured in their first song for the soundtrack. They had a couple artists, from the United States, Davido from Nigeria, and I believe it was Aisha from the Middle East. Combining different artists from different backgrounds and genres, countries, and I thought that was a big moment. FIFA World Cup, that's the world stage. And after that, I started to see soundtracks. There was the Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. There were a couple of tracks in there from some popular Afrobeats artists. We also have the movie Spider-Verse that came out a couple months back that was featuring a couple Afrobeats artists as well. So, you're starting to see that, the popularity of these stars, spread out throughout the country, throughout the United States. And when I saw that, I knew this, it's going to keep going. This is a genre I feel like for myself, I love listening to. Danielle and I we share tracks when it comes to Afrobeats, and we just, like we mentioned, we start going down this rabbit hole of different artists, and there's so much to discover and learn from these genres, and it's great. I love it.
Any other, what's exciting about the genre right now? I mean, obviously, it's coming out in different areas, and we've seen it in events and in movies. What are some of the moments that have been exciting, maybe for you, Daniela, as a fan and listener?
Yeah.
What do you expect?
Well, I think I mentioned on my recent blog, Afrobeats complements everything from pop, rock. So the collabs are really smooth. I almost feel like Afrobeats elevates pop. I don't really listen to pop, but whenever I see those collaborations, like with Calm Down, I really liked it. And I appreciate Afrobeats because it's a celebration of culture. I think the legacy of music is to honor the heritage of that culture. And I've seen it, through reggaeton, like the influence that Afrobeats has in reggaeton. Reggaeton was originated in dembow, which has it's a Dominican musical genre, but the origins are actually traced back to Jamaican dancehall, and that was an easy connection for adoption for me, where it was a familiar sound, almost elevated in reggaeton. And one of the songs that comes to mind that infuses Afrobeats and reggaeton perfectly is "Como un Bebé" by J Balvin, Bad Bunny, and Mr. Easy. I think that's a phenomenal song, and it just merges the two so well.
I think it's been an interesting, even like further proof of concept for the general sort of like entertainment and cultural movements in like multiculturalism in the US as well, of like people are being open to that. Like Netflix isn't not promoting movies in other languages to US audiences or English speaking audiences. Like those barriers, as we've talked about before, are really coming down. And I think like, I mean, obviously, if you want to keep comparing to some of the popular Latin music, there is a bit more like split English in the songs too. So there's even sort of like a theoretical, easier point of connection versus just songs all in Spanish as well. But yeah, I think the idea that people would be closed off to an art form because of a lack of access through language is no longer the case. And I think this is the movements we're seeing is really yeah, just making that more and more obvious the more commercial success that they see. And I think from a promotion standpoint, you definitely see a lot of strategies used in the promotion of Latin music to help promote Afrobeats as well, starting with the like English speaking artist major collaboration. There's also, I think, a lot of cross collaboration within the Afrobeats artists, just getting names out there, trying to bring in fans of like, okay, you like this person, it's featured on this song, just getting the sort of name recognition out there as well. I think has been a really big part of the promotional strategy. And it's equally been, you know, measured and like slow in certain respects. And then you've got the social media side, which is just gonna like, you know, the two strategies sort of working together of like everything all in your face and, you know, a little bit more of like a natural letting people come to the music on their own. I think this also works as well.
Yeah, a real combination of, you know, open-mindedness, social media sharing, and just this age of streaming, right? I mean, we're seeing this unlimited access to music, and we're getting, you know, algorithms are also seeing these trends and the similarities between music and taking us down new paths. And it's just a whole different way to experience music and discover, you know, new music that maybe isn't from our region.
You know, you guys have talked about the impact of TikTok on music discovery, and I can say from firsthand experience, I wasn't familiar with CK prior to. I don't even have TikTok, but it somehow came up on like my Twitter timeline, and it was known as the TikTok song, the Love One TT song by CK. It's an amazing song, but yeah, the reach that it has, it's really changing the game.
Awesome. What else are we seeing? I mean, again, at Feed Media Group, we curate music and power music for businesses, which, you know, there's a consumer level of awareness. People are talking about Afrobeats. It's definitely getting a lot more traction on consumer streaming. What are we starting to see, you know, Claire and Armando, on, you know, our business customers? How is this affecting our stations and our customer stations and what their end users are hearing?
Yeah, I think it's a good, because the Afrobeat songs that are getting more mainstream play or are sort of coming through the pop avenue, like Daniela said, either like through collaborations or are just, you know, catchy enough that they fit and are involved in, like, they're either on radio, on TikTok, like people are hearing them in other avenues. And therefore that sort of becomes the natural transition in terms of music for businesses of where else this music should be incorporated. So that's where it becomes like a really natural fit of like, yeah, these songs are being heard in other avenues. It belongs in this way as well. And as we've talked about, like sonically, obviously a great fit. As far as just like these really great sort of intoxicating rhythms, and can sort of run the gamut of something more high energy to something like you might say like feels a little bit more key but still has a strong beat behind it. And I think that's actually a really difficult spot to find sometimes when we're looking for, say, like Pilates or like more of like a power yoga focused thing where like you still need energy. You don't want like to be fully relaxed, but the movements aren't quick. So I do feel like the sort of ranges in there make for a good fit, and just, yeah, like are exciting to hear in new contexts.
Yeah, about a year ago, you know, with our First Play product, I started to see, you know, customers start adding in Afrobeats tracks, which was great to see. You know, for me, you know, I love working out. I love, you know, curating music. So I'll try to discover these tracks and put them in my own, discovery stations. And, I don't like doing cardio. I think I mentioned this before. So my cardio is, light boxing. I'll do treadmill, walking, uphill, and also do cycles. So for boxing, what I'll do is, I've discovered so many Afrobeat songs that I like to put in the, maybe the 112, 114 BPM range, just for, a couple jabs on the, in the heavy bag. I try to find on treadmill, which try to get a nice pace. I'll try to discover something that's, 120 to 124 BPM to get me to that, the elevated heart rate where I want to be to burn fat. Then, there's also, slower Afrobeat songs that are closer to the 90 to 100 BPM, which is great. What I tend to do is, I'll cycle going uphill. So, that genre fits a great range of BPMs for particular workouts.
So it's coming through in fitness, it's coming through in pop stations. What do you guys see, what do you think is gonna be next for Afrobeats, or where are we gonna see it pop up next? Any crystal ball visions?
Well, I'll start with this. I see. I think when we talked about reggaeton, I started to see collaborations with artists with like, Selena Gomez, Becky G. I'm starting to see this as well with Afrobeat stars, and it's just going to grow. It's still new, it's still fresh. There's still a lot to discover. In the last week, I've dove in and I've discovered more artists. Just going to Spotify and clicking featured artists, and you just keep going and seeing multiple Afrobeat stars that are great. And I just got started, so this is here to stay, I feel.
Absolutely. I've been working out to reggaeton and Afrobeats for a while now, but as we talked about, it's in movies now. So in entertainment, I think we're going to see that, the audience really just exponentially increases after that. So I'm excited to see more of it infused into entertainment and different avenues.
Yeah, agreed. I'd also say, like, just from we've drawn many parallels to like the growth of Latin music and the growth of Afrobeats. But I do think it's also interesting to point out that like there's things are feeling a little more even in terms of male and female artists that are breaking within Afrobeats. That feels a little bit more progressive and different than it did in Latin, where it was like really big names in Latin were all male. And this sort of tide with Afrobeats, I feel like, is rising a bit more evenly amongst the genders, which I think is really interesting as well, and exciting. And it does seem like they are, working together and invested in each other's success as well. And we get to benefit.
What about like combinations of Afrobeats and Latin music? Like, are we seeing that happen yet? Do we think we'll see more of that?
We've seen it in reggaeton. I'm trying to think of, because that's a really easy. I don't know if it'll quite merge with corridos just yet, but hey, there's already reggaeton and corrido artists collabing, so I don't think it's too far off.
Yeah. I think it'll move even in the like hip hop direction a little bit more like naturally as well.
Another thing I forgot to mention is there was an album that just came out, and I highly recommend people checking it out. But the Marleys have released a new album featuring Bob Marley's greatest hits, featuring Afrobeat stars. So, they're trying to reach a whole new audience. They're trying to get a new audience to discover, Bob Marley and that collaboration, that fusion with Afrobeats. And it's really hard to, reimagine Bob Marley, classics. But I was really impressed by the artists and the tracks that came out of this album. I recommend going and checking out Africa Unite. So we're going to see those collaborations with reggae. All over, all these genres are going to collaborate, and it's going to be great music.
Awesome. Where else should people start if they want to get to know Afrobeats better? Where do they start? What are some good solid foundational tracks that they should be checking out?
Well, the Wizkid album Made in Legos is great. I mean, there's the Burna Boy, Wizkid, Rema. Those are my 3 favorites, but don't be afraid to go down the Spotify rabbit holes. As soon as you click on one of those songs, you'll be able to find. Through there, I found Hawa, who is incredible. I included her on my mixtape in the recent Afrobeats blog, and she's an up-and-coming artist. She's got great beats.
I'd agree with that Wizkid album, Made in Lagos. Check that one out. Davido, I think people should go out and look at Davido. Always has great tracks. For the newer artists that I've discovered, Oxlade has some great tracks. There are a couple new ones that I just discovered in the last couple of weeks. Female artist of Bloody Civilian. She just pushed out an EP about a few weeks back. And there's another artist, the name of Bad Boy Tim's, which is pretty great too.
Yeah, and 2 of my favorite have been Arya Starr and Libyanka, and they're both, I've heard, get radio play, which is really great. And I think, just the vocal quality is also just like really good. They both just have unique voices, seem to be writing from very unique perspectives. So I think that will be continue to be sort of the exciting part of watching the genre grow, is sort of, for me, frequently comes back to storytelling and the perspectives we're able to see from an international audience. So those 2 are exciting for me.
Awesome. Well, I know this conversation around Afrobeats is really just getting started. So excited to see more collaborations coming, excited to see it seeping into other genres. We'll certainly be back talking about it soon. If you have favorite Afrobeat artists, drop it in the comments. We'll put a link to the blog that Daniela put together with a mixtape to get you started on your listening journey. And thanks for joining us. Again, we work at Feed Media Group. We help businesses power music and apps. And we're here the first of the month to talk about topics all around music curation, from genres to use cases. And we're so glad that you joined us today. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.